when they're talking about like public speaking, never let them see you sweat. Never emceed a conference in a 90-degree tent that just kept all of the body heat and all the air conditioning vents all the way along the wall here, all in one room. So I don't know if that's going to work. But so Joe Lepper is our next to last speaker. He works at New Relic, and I took a look actually at his talk description, and I've got to say, I have absolutely no idea what he's going to be about. I have no idea, but I can tell for sure it's going to be fun. And I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So everybody give Joe a hand.
Hi there, I'm Joe. Fun fact, when I wrote the synopsis, the abstract, I also had no idea what I was going to talk about. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to tell you a story. It starts out with this email thread that I'm on with a bunch of friends in Chicago. One day, someone posted this link to it. It's it here, and I know it's cut off, but you don't really need to know what it says. It's about Saturday Night Live, and it has the word skit in the title, which isn't that big deal in the grand scheme of things. But there's a few comedy aficionados on the thread, and to a comedy aficionado, the word skit is kind of offensive. Saying that a piece of sketch comedy or an improv performance is a skit is kind of absurd. It's like confusing Java and JavaScript. They kind of look the same, and the names are sort of similar, but to anyone who knows the difference, you just don't do that. I don't really have a strong stance on the issue myself, but in general, I respect the energy that it takes to feel passionate about something. So when my friend Dustin responded with just the word sketch, as he often did when he saw a blog post using the word skit, I understood where he was coming from. And a second later, he followed it up by noting that he wanted to be that guy on Reddit that would just pop into a conversation when someone used the word skit and corrected them, which got me thinking, we could totally write a Reddit bot that does this. This is how I made skitbot. Over the next few nights, I worked to throw together a quick node program that would meet the goals of this noble mission. Reddit is built in such a way that you can add .json to the end of almost any URL and get the underlying data structure for the page. So all skitbot has to do is log into Reddit, it stores a cookie and a token, and then it long polls reddit.com/comments.json. And that gives it access to a more or less real-time stream of all the comments being posted to Reddit at any moment. The Reddit API has some strict rules about how frequently you can hit it. So like if you decide to go and build your own bot, you should keep in mind that you can't hit the API more than 30 times in a minute. But they do send you some nice headers that you can keep track of to make sure that you don't go over that. Also, if you're interested in building your own Reddit bot, I have some stuff that I'll make available to you. And there's also a really nice Python library called pra. Don't tell the JavaScript developers. As for skitbot, though, it long polls Reddit in a way that respects these rules. And when it gets each response, it sifts through all of the comments, and it looks for the word skit. When it finds a match, it notes the comment's ID, which it can use to issue a post back to /comment on Reddit. It also has to pass along in the query string a message parameter. Fortunately, skitbot is very simple. All it knows how to do is say, I think you mean sketch. But that's really all it needs to accomplish its mission. And I'll admit that this was an exercise in dubious usefulness, but it got some attention. Most of it was negative. One of the early lessons that I learned from skitbot was that the word skit in Swedish also sort of means shit. But it's a little less profane than that. You can see that this person here has actually altered their comment to take skitbot's advice. I should point out that this, I think, I don't read Swedish, but I think that this is a Reddit for Swedish stoners, which it was essentially like the perfect audience for this thing. But other Reddits were less welcoming. This is fairly typical of the vast majority of responses that skitbot garners. Mostly people are confused or annoyed. A lot of them point out that the two words are synonyms, and in fact, this the link you can see up there, the word sketch, is to the Wikipedia article for sketch comedy, which itself lists skit as a synonym. Here's someone pointing that out to me. One of the fun things that I got out of this initial experience is that a lot of people weren't sure if this were a bot or just someone very dedicated to the eradication of the word skit. I got this sort of response fairly frequently. Basically, someone saying, "Is this a bot?" and then arguing with it. And just to point out that not all of the responses I got to skitbot were terrible, here's one that agrees that skitbot has made the right call. As I started sifting through the responses that skitbot got, I noticed that above all, the most common response I got was that skit and sketch were synonyms. So this gave me an idea. I realized that if I could add another bot into the mix, I could have bots that would respond to people interacting with skitbot. So I created another account called Synonym Checker. And that responds when people use the words synonym or synonyms in response to skitbot. Yeah. Which is how I ended up making BotSkit. BotSkit is a framework for easily spinning up new Reddit bots. It allows you to specify a number of different Reddit accounts to control as bots, and it gives you this YAML file you can update. Each bot can be either a parent or a child, and has a list of keywords that it looks for. And in this context, a parent is a bot that's looking through all the comments being posted to Reddit at any one time for its keywords. A child subscribes to a parent and looks to any responses to that parent bot's comments. So all you have to do is update this YAML file, restart the server, and you're good to go. As BotSkit pulls Reddit, it keeps track of any comments that it posts. When it receives a 200 from /comments, it stores the new comments ID and the name of the bot that posted it in a table in Postgres. That way, as BotSkit continues to pull Reddit, it can check to see if any of the comments it finds are in response to something it's already posted. We loop through the comments that we've received, and we query the database with their parent ID. If we don't find a message that matches the parent ID, then we assume it's not in reply to us, and all we have to do is check with our parent bots. However, if we do find a record that matches in our table, then we simply hand the message off to the child bots. This allows for the scripting of robot plays. I have sort of grander plans for this than what I'm going to talk about in a second. I imagine that you could build like sort of an immersive experience with dozens of different bots. This is something that Why the Lucky Stiff actually did on IRC and in other venues as well. But I want to talk about a project that I've been working on lately that is less trollish. And to do that, we should first talk a little bit about art history. So for those of you who've taken any art history classes or are otherwise knowledgeable about the subject, I'd like to apologize for repeating what you already know and potentially doing it really poorly. So let's talk about an artist that's one of the more influential in the 20th century. His name was Marcel Duchamp. His early work was influenced by early 20th century movements. During this phase of his career, he was a painter. And we can see influences of Cubism, Fauvism, and Futurism in these paintings. This is New Descending Staircase. It's one of Duchamp's early notable pieces. It's a departure from the Cubist paintings of the time. He's trying to record a movement of time across a canvas rather than just a single moment. It's about showing the viewer something more complex than just a single moment. It's a reaction to motion pictures and photography. So Duchamp paints this in 1912, and it's exhibited in the Armory Show, which is sort of the seminal work of early modernist masterpieces, we would call them now, that happened in New York in 1913. It causes quite a stir, but interestingly enough, while this is considered a masterpiece of the era, this is one of the last things he paints. Instead, after emigrating to the United States during World War I, because he couldn't fight, he becomes involved in a new international movement known as Dada. Dada is a movement that's a rejection of reason and tradition in art. There's a lot we could talk about here, but basically, Dadaists rejected society's acts of war, and since art was an extension of society, they rejected art's traditions and mores. What we see here is Fountain. It's a piece that Duchamp is credited with having created in 1917. You may have noticed it's a urinal. It's been rotated 90 degrees. It's sitting on its back, but it's a urinal. It's been signed with a pseudonym, R. Mutt, and dated 1917. If you're interested in anything I'm talking about in this section, I'd encourage you to learn more about Fountain because there's a lot we don't know about it, including whether or not Duchamp himself created it or just submitted it for exhibition. What we do know is that Fountain is the first of what are known as Duchamp's ready-mades, literally everyday items that he found and exhibited as art to challenge our assumptions about what art can be. Today we would call these found objects or found art. But this piece is divergent from the artistic norms of the time that we're primarily interested in here. Fountain marks a departure in thought for the art world. With his exhibition, Duchamp challenges the audience's assumptions, and perhaps unwittingly, it's probably intentional, but he essentially creates what we know as conceptual art. He goes on to create other ready-made pieces, such as this one, LHOOQ. My French is terrible. I don't know what it means. It's apparently an abbreviation of a pun. It's a cheap print of the Mona Lisa with a mustache painted on her. So you didn't actually have that idea first. What we're getting at here, though, is that Duchamp's work informs the work of artists well into the present day. It's his challenging the status quo that allows for works of conceptual art such as Christo and Jean-Claude's Surrounded Islands, wherein the husband and wife surrounded islands with giant sheets of pink plastic, or Joseph Kosuth's 1 and 3 chairs, which consisted of a chair, a picture of a chair, and a enlarged dictionary definition of a chair. For all of these artists, art is in the practice. It's in the thought or the cognition about the piece itself. It's about the mind of the audience and trying to connect to that as an artist. In fact, this goes on to create what we know as performance art, art which attempts to exist outside of the everyday bounds of the gallery or the theater space. It's an act which attempts to challenge or provoke the audience by its very existence, which brings us back to Fountain. Fun fact, numerous performance artists have tried to urinate into Fountain while it was on display, including Brian Eno from Roxy Music. He actually successfully did it. But let's move on from places Brian Eno has peed, and talk about, and we'll talk about some artists that are who are our contemporaries, who are practicing now. There's a lot we can talk about here, but I'm going to focus on just 2 contemporary artists because it informs what I think I'm doing. This is Miranda July, and this is Harrell Fletcher. Both July and Fletcher are artists working in many spaces. July's made film and writes stories. Fletcher works mostly in installations and visual works. Some examples of their work, the first one you may have seen is July's piece, Me, You, and Everyone We Know. Fletcher's also done things like The Best Thing in Museums Are the Windows, which was a 4-day walk from the Exploratorium in San Francisco where he was artist in residence to Mount Diablo. And there were a number of happenings and unveilings along the way. But what I want to talk about is in 2002, a piece they collaborated on called Learning to Love You More. The site is now mostly an exhibition of what used to be. This is what it looked like when I visited it like 3 days ago to screenshot it. If you've never visited it, I recommend the experience. It is very similar to, if anyone's familiar with Zay Frank's The Show, he was largely influenced by this work here. But the basic idea was that July and Fletcher would issue assignments to their audience and that the audience itself would create the work. It is to some the sort of logical conclusion of the movement that Duchamp and the Dada started at the turn of the 20th century. The idea is that the artist is a cognitive curator. They're doing the heavy lifting of generating a unique idea and allowing that seed to take root in the audience and blossom. July and Fletcher at the time of Learning to Love You More were perhaps the most prominent faces of a trend in contemporary practice known as relational aesthetics. Relational aesthetics is an idea put forth by a critic, my French is terrible, Nicolas Bourriaud in 1998. The basic idea is that the artist is a catalyst or an instigator rather than the center of the work. To quote him, relational art is a set of artistic practices which take as their theoretical and practical point of departure the whole of human relations and their social context rather than an independent or private space. Or to put it another way for us, for the people in this room, something I think you'll understand, while traditionally what we think about as art is about the implementation, relational aesthetics, relational art is about the interface. You create an interface and your audience implements it for you. Okay, great. Let's go back to bots and how we can use them to provide this interface. After settling upon the general design of BotSkit, I decided that it was probably incumbent upon me to give something back to Reddit rather than just trolling it, or essentially I was just automating an argument. So today I'd like to show you a project I've been calling AuthorBots. AuthorBots is an attempt to see what would happen if people were unwittingly faced with commenters who spoke gibberish sort of in the voice of prominent historical authors. AuthorBot controls, as of right now, 4 accounts: Emily Dickinson, Charlotte Bronte, George Eliot, and Gertrude Stein. Each bot is basically a simple Markov chain generator. You could read a lot more about Markov chains than I have time for here, but from a really high level, you feed a body of text into a thing called a lexer, and the lexer runs through the text. It runs that text through an algorithm that sorts it into individual groups of words. I chopped my stuff into sentences and then broke each sentence into 2-word chunks. You then associate each 2-word chunk with what came before it and what came after it. In my case, I dumped all of this into a Cassandra database. All this was based off of Substack's Markov module and then heavily modified to work with the database because I found that sped up my testing cycle. I could work on other parts of the bot and not have to wait for it to seed the Markov chains in memory. When I run AuthorBot, it stands up a web server which can field requests at endpoints that map to each of the authors defined within it. This request is issued from a modified version of BotSkit. Upon fielding the request, AuthorBot checks Cassandra to see if it knows any of the 2-word chunks contained in the incoming message. If it does, then it just builds a chain probabilistically by randomly choosing sets of words that should precede and follow the recognized phrase. Otherwise, it randomly chooses a phrase and just builds a sentence and sends it back. Once it's found a logical beginning and ending to a message, it just sends that back to BotSkit, and BotSkit knows how to get it onto Reddit. So I've set BotSkit to randomly choose a comment from the stream being posted to Reddit every 5 to 10 minutes and just randomly respond to it. BotSkit also keeps track of all the comments it's posted and replies to anyone that responds to it. This encourages interaction. Of course, for a lot of people, the presence of a bot, much like someone clowning on the side of the street, is fairly annoying. But we're in Portland, where weird is a way of life, and people do clown on the side of the street, so it's important for us to persevere. Here we have someone wondering if Emily Dickinson is okay. They say, "Are you all right, Emily? We're starting to worry. We think you should get out more." I got a ton of answers like, "What?" and "okay," or "say what?" And occasionally someone suggests that Gertrude Stein is on acid or weed. And then my favorite of the "are you high" responses, there's like a whole subset of these, is this one. Gertrude says something beautiful, and having once fallen on her head, had a strange vacant expression, etc. And it's kind of beautiful what she says. And then the reply says, "How many joints did you inject this morning?" I should point out that this was in a discussion titled, "What have you accidentally set on fire?" And as long as we're looking at weird responses, this is probably my favorite. If you can't read it, it says, "I open mouth kissed a horse once." But that's kind of perfect. Like that's the sort of thing that we're looking for. Like we're looking for this interaction between people, and like it's in random places and it's unexpected and the participants are unwitting. But like that's kind of the point. Like we're all unwitting in our relationships with the people around us. The only thing you control is you. And then every once in a while, we actually develop a sense of community in the responders. It's probably impossible to read all of that because some of it's off the screen. But up top and above what we can see, Gertrude Stein spotted off some gibberish. And this is related to the reality show Big Brother. And a number of people say that they have no idea what's happening. They share this experience of not quite understanding what's been said and wondering if something's wrong with how they're parsing the sentence. And about halfway down the screen there, or actually at the bottom here, someone says, "Has anyone really been far even is decided to use even go want to do look more like?" And then farther down the conversation, another posts a link to this. So they've actually, and that's the whole thing. And so like, you know, they've taken this seed, this like just weird moment that's occurred, and they're taking it and running with it. And like, that to me is fantastic. Yeah. It's that willingness to engage with the unknown and the weird and the unexpected. But of course, it doesn't always go as I've intended. Here, for example, is George Eliot having a bit of a stroke. But sometimes it creates these wonderful and weird results. And I promise I only have a couple more examples to subject you to. Here, Charlotte Bronte says, "A light invisible to my changeable green, the sea blue tint and solemn luster of his own. More unequal matches are made every day." And a Reddit user has posted the response "like so" as a link to this picture. And to me, that's what makes it worthwhile. Like, we have here a relationship between myself as the bot author and this person who is just, wandering through their day, wasting time on the internet, as we all do. They found this little kernel of the unexpected, and they chose to interact with it. It was spontaneous, and it probably just took them a moment, quick Google search, but that's it. Like, that's the point. The rest just plays out as it does here. And this is the last one I have. This is from a thread where the original poster, who has this wonderful baritone voice, was offering to record anything that people posted. And Charlotte Bronte just happened to appear, so he recorded this.
Marched into another room to breakfast. How glad I was to behold a prospect of getting something to eat or a sad smile. But one well pleased at seeing a danger averted. I think I am likely to perform.
And so I'm still getting some responses. The bots are on when they don't fall down and stop working unexpectedly. But as I was working on this talk, I had a coworker ask me what it was I wanted people to walk away from this with. And it's this. I want you to make things. And I want you to change things. Like, we talk about that a lot in web development and in programming in general. Like, we're going to change the world. Software is going to eat the world. It's the next big thing. But like, and that's really cool. But I work for a company that sells performance data. Like, we help you find performance problems, and I love what we do. And you can ask my coworkers or my wife or my kids. I'm incredibly passionate about it. But like, not everything I'm working on has to be the next Facebook. Not everything I'm working on has to be my startup or my business. Like, we have at our fingertips the greatest experiment in human relations ever built. And every person in this room is a web developer, a programmer, or a designer. We live on the internet. Like, I don't know about you, but I spend probably 12 hours a day on the internet doing something. I want to encourage you to pursue some of those ideas that don't seem like your next startup. Like, try something for the sake of fun every once in a while. Try something because you might be passionate about it. Make a bot. Make an experiment in visualization or animation. Just do it and be weird. Be wonderful and be unexpected. Because it's the unexpected that makes us human. And it's in the unwitting that we are made wonderful. So that's it. This is how you can get a hold of me or find BotSkit if you're interested. Thanks.